that's what started in 2013. I am a deputy mayor since 2013. I'm a member from the Green Party. The Green Party came in the city government in 2013, and I became the deputy mayor for mobility and public works. And in 2013, I visited some cities to be inspired by them. I visited Utrecht, Amsterdam, Groningen, Copenhagen, and it was very inspiring. These are marvelous cities, but it was also paralyzing, because when I got there, I saw the infrastructure for cyclists and for pedestrians, and the quality level was so high that it seemed almost impossible to reach that same level. I've thought at that moment, I thought I should need 20 or 30 years to get at that level. I should need a huge budget to have the same quality level of the infrastructure. And so at that moment, we started to think, how can we get faster? Because infrastructure takes so long. How can we get faster? And what we did was we made a shortcut. So we made the circulation plan, and that was our, how do you call it, our salvation, because with the circulation plan we succeeded in reach our goals in quality of life, accessibility, and so on. I go back to the situation before the circulation plan. We measured that if you looked to the city center of Ghent, where about 120,000 people are living, it's the historical center, the medieval center. We saw that in rush hour, in the morning and in the evening, that about 50% of car traffic had no destination in the city center. What you see is there is 11.33% of car traffic that had no destination at all in the city center. So that were people who knew the way, who knew how to drive and how to drive fast just through the city. 28% is what we call semi through traffic. For example, people who live in a neighborhood here in the center and have to go to the highway here in the south, and drove not via the ring road, the beltway, but just through the city center. And then you have also 9% of car traffic. Yeah, that's traditional people who use their car for to drive 200 meters to a shop and to get back 200 meters to their house. So 50%, 49% was traffic that could be avoided. That's huge. So there was too much motorized traffic in the city center. And then this is what we did. So you see the city center. The ring road has about a circumference of 11-12 kilometers. And you have the distance here from one point to another here is the diameter is about 3 kilometers, 3.5 kilometers. So what we did was in the middle, in purple, there you have a car restricted zone. It's not totally car free, but you can only get in the car restricted zone with a permit. If no permit, then you can't get in. And then and it's very easy, it's very simple. Then we have 6 zones around it here, from red to orange, green, and so on, blue here, 6 zones. And that 6 zones are not so important for pedestrians, cyclists, public transport, taxis, because for them nothing changed. But for car users, it was very important, because as a car user, if you wanted to go from one zone to another, for example, from the red zone to the blue zone, the blue area, it was impossible. It became impossible to drive just from the red zone to the blue zone, except if you took the ring road. So the moment you, if you are in the red zone, you want to go to the blue zone with a car, then they have to drive to the ring road, take the ring road, and get in the blue zone. As simple as that. So that means that you see the 6 zones, the car restricted zone and the 6 zones around it. There is no exchange of traffic between the zones of car traffic. And so that means there is no more going through traffic in the city. It's as simple as that. So what we did, we had the first sketch of the circulation plan, of this circulation plan, in October 2014. And we implemented it in April 2017. And that's a long period of preparation, but we changed everything in one weekend. In April 2017, Friday evening, everything was like it was, with the through traffic and the car traffic and so on. And the next day, after the weekend, the Monday, everything was changed, and it was impossible to go from one zone to another with the car. And we did it with a little moment. Okay, I'm back. So we changed everything in one weekend. Friday, everything like it was before. The Monday morning, no car traffic between the zones. We did it on a very cheap manner, with blocks, bollards, paint, with plants and benches, and with number plate recognition with cameras. So it was a fast plan, and it was also rather cheap. It costed us about 5 million euro. If I take all the measures, it costed about 5 million euro. Yep. And these are the results. And the results were also there very fast. We had an increase of cyclists of about 60%. Before the circulation plan, our modal split, the share of cyclists was about 20%, 22%. After the circulation plan, and that was some months after it, after the implementation, we had a share of about 35%. The public transport users increased with about 12%. And these two facts are very interesting and very important. Why? Because if you want to take circulation measures, if you want to implement a circulation plan, the opponents always say, pay attention, you should better the alternatives. And if the moment the alternatives are good, then you can implement your circulation plan. That's wrong, because the implementation of the circulation plan betters the alternatives. The public transport got had an increase of 12% of users because it got more reliable. It got faster and more reliable. Why? Because after the implementation of the circulation plan, there were no traffic jams anymore. And so no traffic jams means faster public transport, more reliable, and so more public transport users. Also the same for cyclists. Why are there more cyclists some months after? Why were there more cyclists some months after the circulation plan? Because there was space for them. So circulation plan to give space to public transport, to give space to cyclists, means the alternatives get better. So if opponents say first better the alternatives, then you can say no, make a circulation plan and the alternatives get better. Very important, our accidents had a decrease of minus 35%. That's rather important. And also air quality got better, NOx minus 18%. So you can say there was an increased livability. So we can say that the circulation plan of Ghent was cheap, was fast to implement, and had a huge impact. So fast, cheap, impact, that's I think a good measure. So that's one line. The circulation plan is not the only thing. I will tell you also about implementation and the period of preparation. But first, our other policy lines. You have circulation plan, the circulation measures, give space to cyclists and pedestrians. But it's also very important to build infrastructure. If infrastructure, I said it already, that takes so long. But with infrastructure, you can reassure, you can guarantee the results you have with the circulation plan. You can reassure that you can strengthen those results. So in the last 10 years, we built in Ghent about 40 pedestrian and cycling bridges, underpasses, tunnels, and so on. We built more than 100 kilometers of cycling infrastructure, cycle paths, and so on. And that's also important. You have the circulation plan, fast, cheap, impact. You have infrastructure. It's slower, but it reassures the results. So it's not only the large infrastructure, as you can see on the pictures, but it's also small infrastructure. It means space for cyclists to park their bike, also for cargo bikes, also closed bike parkings in the neighborhoods, but also that's also small infrastructure. What you see is the signs for cyclists. It's a suggestion where they should ride their bike. If you know that here you have the tram lines, and it can sometimes be dangerous for cyclists, and so we suggest where to ride. Third policy line that is very important is to reinforce the cycling culture. What we try to do is, besides of the circulation measures and besides of the infrastructure, is to show to cyclists that they are very important, that they are the most important road users, together with the pedestrians, that they are the most important road users in the city. And we try to support all the initiatives that show that cycling is very important and is very good for the city. For example, you see the sign of the Fietsambassade Ghent. That's the cycling embassy of Ghent. Takes all kinds of measures, actions to support cyclists. For example, for the moment they are busy with their air and grease action. What is the air and grease action? That's an action where they have a position nearby important cycling routes, and so there they give at all the cyclists who wants it, who ask it. They pull up the tires of the bike of the cyclist, and they clean up their chain and grease it. That's a very simple action. It's also very cheap, but it shows to the cyclists that they are important road users. So 3 policy lines: circulation, infrastructure, cycling culture. And so this is what we planned and what happened. So our goal was to have 16% of, in 2020, 16% of pedestrians, 30% of cyclists, and 13% of public transport, and 41% of cars. This was the goal for 2020, but already in 2018 we had 35% of cyclists. So with the circulation plan, we reached already our goal in 2018. The goal for, you can say, the goal for 2030. So it's a very the impact of the circulation plan was very fast. These are the latest numbers. This is for me a very important number. The journeys by young people within the city center, and you can say that 70% of the trips they make are sustainable. 50% by bicycle and 20% by foot, on foot. So it means 50% by bicycle means that cycling is safe. Otherwise, you can't get young people and children, so many young people and children on the bike if it's not safe. And then also very important, the car ownership in 2015, 1.2. A year after the circulation plan, it was already it decreased already to 1.1, and in 2021 it was 1.0. So car ownership is decreasing. What are we busy to do for the moment? For the moment we are busy with the mobility plans for the outskirts. We had our circulation plan in the city center, but now for the moment we are busy, and you can see it here. You can see here the city center, and we are now busy with mobility plans for the outskirts, with always the same philosophy. We want to get rid of through traffic in the neighborhoods where people live. Where people live, that's for the people and not for the cars. That's our philosophy. And so we are busy to implement them. The first the first of the mobility plans for the outskirts will be implemented this year. So we go further with improving quality of life. Also, we are going on with building infrastructure and reinforce the cycling culture. We support public transport, and we stay focused on pedestrians and inclusive mobility. What you see here is our cycling cap. It's especially for people, elderly people, and people, disabled people. We help them to get their destination with a rickshaw to get their destination in the city center. Okay. So that's important. Challenges and lessons learned. What is important is that in participation and communication, the lesson I learned is to talk, and to keep on talking. So, and the story of the preparation period. In October 2013, 14, we had our first sketch of the circulation plan. April 2017, the implementation of the circulation plan. And in that 2.5 years between October 2014 and April 2017, I was almost never at home. Every evening there was a debate. Every evening there was a moment with the residents to talk to them, to hear what they have to say, to hear their remarks and suggestions. And that was very interesting for the quality of the circulation plan, but it was also necessary to have support for the circulation plan. It was a very rough period because the debates were sometimes very hard, very rough. There were sometimes there were also very loud opponents with insults, with yelling, and so on. I even got death threats. I had police surveillance for 6 weeks because of those death threats. And I think it's important not to let you not to back down, but to go on and to keep on talking. Second lesson is not just about mobility, because what we did in Ghent, we made a circulation plan that had a focus only on mobility. And that had to do with the position of my colleagues. Everyone was uncertain about the circulation plan. Should it work or not? And so they kept the distance. But in fact, it should be very interesting if a circulation plan should not only be a mobility project, but also a cultural project or an economic project, a social project also. So it should be broader than only mobility. Now it was only mobility, and only the discussions were only about mobility. But so that it means that the consequence was that we didn't see all the opportunities and threats for example, the economically for shop owners, for enterprises, and so on. All the opportunities and threats not all were seen. What is also important is to implement fast. Sometimes when I speak to other cities, they are choosing to implement in phases, and that's legitimate, but it's also dangerous, because at a certain moment resistance is becoming stronger, and I think it's better to implement with all the consequences, to implement fast rather than to do it slower and in phases. But what is also important is that the moment there are, when we saw that there were mistakes, that we had made mistakes, it's important to adjust if possible. So what I learned is that if you want to work on, there are three things three lines that are very important. We worked for improving quality of life. It's all about redistributing space. That's the main line. It's about space and redistribute it to all road users. And what is also very important is to have the political will. And so if you want to build up these 3 lines, you can work with circulation, infrastructure, and culture. So what happened in Ghent? What you see above on the right is the same square as you see left under, but right above is a square before the circulation plan, and that's a parking, as many squares were in Ghent. This is the same square now, because after circulation plan, this is in the car restricted zone. There were no cars anymore there, and so we could green it, and you see what it became. And that's what it's all about. That's why we did what we did. We improved quality of life. Thank you. I can imagine there are questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Filip, for the very insightful presentation. And I'm sorry for the technical stress at the beginning. But I can say this audience is a participant to One Planet City Challenge and quite ambitious for setting goals for reduced car traffic and doing lots of things for that, but it's a common challenge for all the cities. So with that information, I want to leave the floor to you cities that are participating, so you can directly ask your question, or I can moderate from chat. Yes. The first question is from Karin. Is Ghent alone using this model? Then is Eric.
No, Karen, we are not alone. We didn't invent it ourselves. We copied our model from Groningen in the 70s. Groningen did the same what we did in the 70s of the former century. We did it on a larger scale, and in Groningen it was a bit smaller, but they are really the inventors. We only copied it and pasted it. So that's what most cities should do. It's always interesting to go to other cities, to get inspired, to copy things, to adjust it so it fits in your own city. But no, we didn't invent it. Groningen did, and we copied it. And so since we implemented it, several other cities did the same. For example, Birmingham did the same. Birmingham is a city of 2 million people. That's something different than Ghent. Ghent 270,000. Birmingham 2 million. They are busy to implement it. So other cities, also other cities did it as well.
Yes, I think. Thank you, Filip. I think Eric was first, and then Susanne, and I will take the questions then from chat.
Yes. Hello, and thank you for an amazing presentation. Very, very nice. I was wondering about what did you say? Like people were against it in some parts, and I was wondering if what that was about. Was it certain topics? I can imagine that people can get like scared and angry if they think that rescuing vehicles and everything won't be able to come in. But was it other? What was the main issues?
What I learned in those 10 years as deputy mayor for mobility is that mobility is emotion. It's about habits. It's about what people are used to do. And so if you want to change those habits, if you want to have different patterns in how they travel, it's always very emotional. But that's okay, because we are not afraid from emotions. So the point is that to be convinced about what you as a politician, what you are doing, and to try to persuade people to support it. And what I also learned is that it's very emotional, and so some opponents who are very emotional are also very loud. But don't forget that there is always a big silent majority who's in favor. But the people who are in favor, they have trust, they support you, they have trust, and they are silent. This was a very weird moment I had in the moment of the implementation. I had a very rough period of 2.5 years with the insults, the yelling, and so on. I told you about it. And then the first day of the implementation, the 3rd of April 2017, a journalist, so everything was changed, and a journalist asked me to take a ride with a bike in the city center. I was a bit afraid of it, because as a politician, to go with a journalist into the city, and then if we should have met angry people who yelled at me, it would be very difficult for me in the newspapers and the heads of in the newspapers. But what the strange thing that was what happened was, I started with a ride with a journalist at 11 a.m. and from the first minute to the last minute, 12 o'clock, I only got congratulations. People who with thumbs up, people who said, "We are so glad you succeeded." And I thought at that moment, my God, where were you all that years? And so I learned that mobility can be emotional. There can be a lot of noise, but don't forget that there are many people who are silent. And what I try to do now is to with other measures is to search that people who are in favor. And we always try to we ask them to talk about how they look at those measures, because at that moment you don't have only the noise of the opponents, but also the opinion of those who are in favor, and that's a very different position for a politician. And so
it was no certain like lessons you learned, like we should have been more clear on this or that, so that the people wouldn't be angry. It was just habits and emotional.
That's a bit what you ask is a bit what I said about talk and keep talking. That's necessary, because there are always new questions, and I think we did all we could to answer all those questions, but there are always the questions keep on coming, and so it's necessary to make that effort to answer those questions. But still, it's necessary also to hear the people in favor. But but you should always keep on answering the questions they ask. Yeah, that's. And yeah, there are always things that are not clear. The circulation plan was in the center of the debate for 2.5 years before the implementation, and still the 3rd of April, there were people who said, whoa, what is happening? They didn't know there was a circulation plan, and yeah, that's sometimes weird.
Thank you, Erik and Filip. And we have lots of questions. And Susanne.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Susanne Duvallinings, representing the city of Helsingborg in southern Sweden. I'm curious.
I was there. I was there some years ago. I had a presentation in Helsingborg.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm curious about bicycle culture, because we feel that is a big challenge. And I wonder if you should point out one key element or factor that we should work with, what would that be?
You mean on cycling culture?
Yes.
What is maybe the most important thing is that cyclists should not feel weird. They should feel that they are, what they are doing is very normal, and that's what we try to do in everything. And everything that we do, we try to say the cycling mode is a normal mode. Also pedestrians, the same for pedestrians. So, for example, to have how do you call it? Counter poles, the poles that count how many cyclists are passing by. It's very important, because at that moment, you know you are not alone. Even if you are riding alone, you see the pole with the digit of the number of cyclists that already passed by. Then you know you're not alone. You have to try to build a community, and in cycling that's also easy. If you're not alone, you feel it. So that's what we try to do. And so, for example, what I told you about the air and grease action, such small measures are showing that cyclists are not anymore in the margin of the road, but are in the center of the road. You show they are important. It's the same as if you travel and you are somewhere in a foreign city and you are in a hotel. You have some hotels where you come in and you feel welcome immediately, and that's what you have to do. Cyclists have to feel they are welcome, and we are doing it with actions of the cycling embassy of Ghent, but we are also doing it by building good infrastructure. So what our infrastructure should be good, not only because the infrastructure is then safe. Yeah, you have to have, if you build a cycling bridge, it should be broad. So not only because it's safe, but also because it's comfortable. You don't have the impression, oh yeah, you don't have the cyclists may never have the impression, oh, I can be lucky that they have spared some space for me. No, it's normal they have space. And for example, also small measures we take. If you look at the city and it's historical, you have always, if you go to a cycle path or to a cycling bridge, and so you have several times you have a threshold, and that's not pleasant to cycle. It's also not pleasant for cyclists. So we try to get rid of that thresholds. So such small measures are very important. Cyclists should always feel, pedestrians should always feel, they are the most important road users in the city.
Incredible remarks. We have to make it that as well in Sweden. I mean, it makes it real. Yes. The next question from Tobias: how did you handle the parking issue? That's a quite problematic issue for Sweden and for most of the cities.
What is the parking issue?
Tobias, would you like to elaborate your question?
Yes, I was wondering if you built like parking facilities near the ring road.
Some, not so much, because what we try to do is we try to get people. We try to shift people from car to cycling. At that moment, that's not the most important thing to build parking infrastructure. We built some park and rides around the city center, but as I said, that's not the most important thing to do. What is important about parking? What I didn't tell you is that before the circulation plan in 2017, we implemented a parking plan in Ghent in 2015, where we increased the parking fees quite a lot. So to park a car got more expensive for everyone in Ghent. And so at that moment, the shift already started. Some people said, this is too much. This is what I don't want to pay that fee anymore. And so they shifted towards public transport or cycling. What we also did is that some years later, in 2021, it was also already in the first parking plan. In the real really in the center of the center, it was forbidden to park more than 3 hours. You only can park there 3 hours. So that means you get in and 3 hours later you get out. But we took this measure more general. So in the city center, now where you have the circulation plan, the maximum of to park for visitors is 5 hours. In the really center, it's 3 hours. In the rest of the area in the ring, within the ring road, it's 5 hours. So what we see is that at that moment, many people shift to cycling public transport, but we also scrapped in the last 6 years, we scrapped about 7,000 parking spots. And why did we scrap them? Why did we scrap it? Because we wanted to have space for other things, such as greenery, parking for bikes, to have terraces from cafes and bars and so on. So to get the life in the city, you need space. And if you want to have some furniture for elderly people or some play elements for the children, you need space. And so therefore we scrapped about 7,000 parking spots in the city center. And parking is not an issue. Parking is a sign of, how do you call it? How should I call it? Car luxury. It's many people who have a car say, yeah, I don't find a place to park. So that's because of there are so many cars. It's not because there is a lack of parking spots. It's because there are too many cars. So we scrapped it, and yeah, for some people it's for me it's an issue if we don't have space enough for other things.
That's a really good remarks. Maybe we should quote you with the parking luxury and the parking issue, because in here it's quite a difficult subject to deal with. Yes,
but also
yes.
it's also in Ghent it's difficult. I'm already 10 years a deputy mayor for mobility, and from the first day till now, there's a battle for every parking spot.
Yes.
But then it's important to have a clear vision, and it's important to have the political will and courage to scrap them. That's so easy, but it's not so easy. But you understand.
Exactly, but still, it's like takes a courage and yeah, will to do it. Anders, the question: have you measured car kilometers driven in the bigger Ghent area and not just model split?
No, we didn't. We have the model split. We have every 3 years we have a survey about mobility in Ghent, but to measure the kilometers driven, it takes a big survey, and so no, we didn't. But what we see is that if we look at the traffic intensity, we saw that after the implementation of the circulation plan, car traffic on the ring road increased with about 10%. In the city center, car traffic really decreased, but on the ring road there was an increase of about 10% of cars. But after some years, and now we are 6 years after the implementation, we have the same level of cars on the ring road as before the circulation plan, but in the city center there are really fewer cars.
Thank you, Olivia. Did you adjust the circulation plan in accordance to the feedback from the citizens of Ghent, or was the plan pretty much the same from the start in 2015 to the implementation in 2017?
I will be honest, it looked really much the same. We adjusted it. There were many interesting suggestions and remarks from citizens, but the base, the concept was pretty much the same. The key elements didn't change, and the key elements were a car restricted zone, 6 zones, no exchange between the zones. So why was it pretty much the same? Because the moment we presented our first sketch, there was a political agreement, and so that's such an agreement. To get such an agreement is not always easy, because we are a coalition city government. We are with the Greens, the Social Democrats, and the Liberals, and to have such an agreement, yeah, that's not always easy. And if you change one element in the agreement, it means that you have to change also other elements. So that's the difficult thing, that one time you have the agreement, it's very difficult to change key elements. But we adjusted it in many different smaller things to what citizens suggested it. But yeah, it's not always as easy to change such agreements. Is that an answer, Olivia?
Yes, that's an answer. I was just wondering how much input from the citizens you took into account.
I think participation of citizens is not always as easy as some people say, because there's always also opposite opinions. And what do you have to do with that different opinions? And yeah, it's not always as easy, especially if it's a big project such as our circulation plan. Yeah, you can try to have the support of people, but to really have participation and impact of citizens, it's always difficult because of that political agreement. If if the only party in the city government should be the Greens, it should be easier to get participation than with different coalition partners, with different political partners. But it's not like that.
Yeah, it was just on the slide where you wrote about challenges and lessons learned. You wrote that participation was an important factor, and I was just wondering how you took into account that citizen participation. But maybe you weren't talking about citizens. Maybe you were talking about
No, I was talking about citizens. But what we did, and maybe I didn't mention it, but what we always did to the moment we talked to citizens, the moment they there was participation, was some key elements can't be changed. So, and they knew it. Exchange between zones was impossible. We will. I said then we won't do it. No, there's no exchange between zones. But what changed, for example, in some zones, was the frontier between two zones. It changed sometimes after participation, but not the exchange. No exchange. So, and we try to make it clear from in the beginning.
That's good. Thank you.
The next question, Olle, any new travel surveys and/or attitude surveys planned in the near future?
As I said, we have surveys every 3 years about how people travel and behave in traffic. So the next is in 2024, where we try to see what people are doing with how they travel, how they act in mobility. There are many things we ask in such a service. For example, about car sharing. Car sharing is very important for us. It helps people who live really in the city to use a car if they need one without possession of a car. The moment I started in 2013 as deputy mayor, we had about 2,000 members of of a car sharing organization. In total, 2,000. Now we have about 20,000. So that makes lots of difference, because it means that people don't possess their car. If they don't possess their car, there is fewer needs of parking spots and so on. So yeah, every 3 years we have that survey which looks at travel patterns and at attitude.
Thank you. By the way, Filip, is it possible that you stop sharing your screen so that we can see each other?
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
I saw you, but maybe you didn't see me.
I saw you, but it's just yeah.
Okay.
The next question, we have 3 more. If it's okay for all of the participants, Anders, do you use traffic models that could calculate car traffic disappears and not just is redistributed?
Yes, we used it, but my opinion is that traffic models, we used it to have our thinking about the circulation plan and the circulation measures to start it, to strengthen it, but not as a scientific result. The result of the traffic models is, for me, no result of a scientific process, and so the truth and nothing but the truth. But with the result of the traffic models, you can start the discussions, the thinking about how to about the choices you have to make.
Thank you. Karin, do you plan to keep the model as it is or develop change it or even take it away when all mobility habits have changed?
Yes, that's a bit, the last part of that question is a bit theoretical. Theoretical, the moment that everyone has shifted to cycling, public transport, to walking, you could say we don't need the circulation plan anymore. But that's rather theoretical. But if we can better the circulation plan, we will do it and we will adjust it. And the development that now is important is the mobility plans for the outskirts, because they will influence also the city center. If all the through traffic, if we get rid of the through traffic in the outskirts, it will mean that more people shift towards cycling and public transport.
Thank you. And the last question is from Salomon. How are you organizing Ghent in order to be able to arrange citizen dialogue in that intensity for such a long time? I wonder that as well. It's quite impressive, actually, that you, during 2 years, what you did. Which kind of support did you get from the non-political organization? Or organizations, I think, I guess. Do you have any recommendations to us in this matter?
Several questions. How are you organized? I was lucky that I had very motivated people in the administration, civil servants, who were very motivated to do what we did. And so there were many volunteers to accompany me every evening when I was in a debate or something. We have a mobility administration that is for in comparison with other Belgian cities is rather big. Yeah, that was very important that I could have enough civil servants to do this all. It were all people of the mobility administration who did it. And it was, in fact, it was a long period. What is very important, when I say this, what is very important is, that's also a lesson I learned, is that you should be aware, as a politician, you should be aware that also the people of the administration, the civil servants, should be proud of what they are, have the chance to be proud of what they are doing. So I try to have them to give them also ownership, and that was rather easy when I talk about the urban planners, the mobility planners. That's rather easy. Let them do their thing and so on. But for example, all the workers that changed all the signs in one weekend, it was very important that they had ownership, and I supported them, and I showed also to the media, to the papers and the news channels what they did as in their work, and to show that they were so. I also said to them that how important they were, and that's very important, to have a city administration that has ownership. Yeah, and then what the other questions were? Yeah, the non-political organizations. Yeah, that's an important one. That's something I tell several times, is that non-political organizations are very important, very, very, very important. But what they sometimes miss is the political element. Not that they should be political organizations, but they should act, not only be in the audience and say, oh, you should do it like this, or you should do it like this. They should act. An organization as WWF should be an actor in the political field, even if WWF is not a political organization. I think that the non-political organizations are sometimes too far from the political action and too much an audience that gives applause or says boo, but that's not enough. And so that's important that yeah, for politicians that wants to have results in mobility, in nature development, in climate change, and so on. The non-political organizations should be political.
Yes, that's what we are trying to do, but it's not always easy to be neutral at the same time to influence politicians, but it's definitely something that we are trying to do. I think we have to wrap up, but the last question from Olivia, then I think we should wrap up. But Olivia said that you mentioned about the other social, economic, cultural factors. Not about mobility. Can you expand on that? How could these other aspects be included in a better way? What will you recommend us to do?
The other, what Anders wrote, tipsa honom att sluta dela.
That's not a question. That's not a question.
I hope this is not an insult or something like that.
No, that's not an insult. It's just a recommendation that we can see each other better without the presentation.
No insult at all.
Okay. To the question of Olivia, what I meant with saying it's not just about mobility is because the moment you start with the project and it's only mobility, you get all that emotions. And for example, shop owners and enterprises and owners of enterprises, they are always concerned about their income, and that's normal. Yeah. But if you only talk about mobility, they always have, as a result, their concern. So we should have talked about, oh, what can happen to you if we implement such a circulation plan? So it means, for example, that the deliveries should happen on a different base. How can you do that? How can you organize that your deliveries are on time? And okay, and if we implement the circulation plan, what does it mean for you as a shop owner? What will happen? How can you make your shop more attractive in a different city? What is important, for example, for shop owners is that everything economically for shops, everything has changed. When I was a young kid, you came to the city because what you could find in the city, if you needed something, the supply was much bigger. What you could find in the city was you had different kind of stuff. In the village where I was born, you didn't have all that shops. But now, even if you live in northern Sweden, far from any city, you can buy everything you want. You just need a laptop and internet. So it means that people come to the city for the experience. And then if you implement a circulation plan, the question is, what does that mean for the experiencing the city? And how can we better it? How can we strengthen it? And so at that moment, you don't have to think alone about mobility. You have to think together with that shop owners and people who are very good in economics. How can we strengthen the city in economics? So that's what I mean. And when I mean, for example, if I say so, it should also be a social project. It's important because for people who are highly educated, it's much more easier to adapt, to change, than for people who are lower educated, working in a factory with severe with strict schemes. And so we should have also looked at how can we help people to change their patterns. And so we didn't, because it was only a mobility project. And that's a pity. It could have been better. But that's for the next cities that implement the circulation plan.
That's for the Swedish city, maybe to inspired. Yeah. Thank you so much, Filip. We have one more question, but we have to, within this group as well in Swedish, just make some reflections and so on. It was terrific presentation and very insightful thoughts, and it gave me for my daily work how as a WWF we should work with those issues, and I hope that our cities also get inspired. So if you have to go to next meeting or the next, thank you so much. I beg the other participant to stay. Thank you, Filip.
It was my pleasure, and I should say till the next time. Bye.
Bye.